Hi, this is MTB214. This is going to be a shorter video. I started reading H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu Mythos Tale. I got this from Target. No, it's probably a few months ago, but it's a lot of short stories of his. I just read a few already over the last few days, so there's a lot of stories in this. It seems that as it progresses, the stories get to longer length. And it sort of reminds me of, this is the first one, Dagon, which is like an ancient god of, like, a pagan god. And with it, it sort of reminded me. So in the story, it's very wordy, but it's interesting that it's the World War One, and he was like a soldier. And what happens is that he's on a little ship, like a little boat by himself, and basically, like, sort of dazed and confused, and he has a dream that he thinks is real, that, like, he's on muddy ground, and there's dead fish and, like, dead bodies there, so it's like the ocean, like, swept away, and then he's traveling, walking along, tired, and then he goes by, like, dry ground, and he sees these different ancient stonework of, it's like some sort of like civilization from ancient times, and there's some sort of like fish humanoid creature, sort of think of creature from the Black Lagoon. And he goes and then sees one of them in person, and it's like terrifying to him. And then the next thing he knows, like, he's like in a hospital bed and thinking, oh, like, what happened? And he tells people his story, but they think he's off his rocker, that he was just, like, from being sort of going mad, being on the boat by himself in the middle of the ocean. So they don't really take him seriously with that. And then I read the second story in that. Well, that's the third one. The second one in that is, how do you even pronounce that? Naralathro. So it's sort of like ancient Egyptian in a way, that there's some being that comes to sort of like the modern time, which is like the early 1900s. I'm pretty sure about 1920 this was written, so a little more than 100 years ago, and that he has all these sort of powers, and he does, like, takes different things and makes technology out of that, and it amazes people. And, like, it's sort of comparing him to like an ancient Egyptian god, and that sort of with the ancient aliens theory, that, like, what people thought were gods were actually, like, technology and beings from somewhere else. And the third story I read from this is The Nameless City, which is they're all just a few pages long in this, until the later ones get longer. So I only read 3 so far. And this is a story of that he's, well, actually, I'm not up to that yet. The Nameless City is there. So he's going on sort of archaeological dig. He travels through a tunnel. He's in the desert, like Egypt, and it's going deeper and deeper underground. And doesn't see that much, and then he sees some things. It's very, like, low in there, has to, like, crawl through. There's some different things in there of, like, different sort of ancient cultures, and then he keeps going deeper and deeper, and it gets very steep, and he sees some sort of light down there, which is odd. He has a torch which actually goes out, and, like, he's crawling through it, and there are these, like, sort of like coffins, but it has, like, glass on the side, and there are these mummies in it that look sort of like reptiles. So it's like, but, like, grotesque. So it's like sort of like reptilian creatures, which sort of is like ancient aliens again, which is like a show on the History Channel. Like, people believe, I don't, but people believe, like, aliens made people, and that there's different kinds. It's interesting, but I don't subscribe to that. And then he's continuing on in there, and that, like, sees all these different things there, and that there's architecture down there that's more advanced the lower that gets under the earth, and said like it could be even miles underground. He's not even sure, but it reminds him of that it's very beautiful, interesting artwork down there. It's more advanced, and that sort of reminds me of it's called the Cerulean hypothesis, that there was some ancient civilization in the distant past, but over time it's sort of been lost to history, and we don't really know about it. But I think it's reptilians in that too, and that was from like Doctor Who. I haven't seen the episode with that, but I've heard of it mentioned elsewhere. So it's definitely like an interesting book. It's very wordy. So if he said it in more like layman's terms, it would have been short, even though short stories would have been short. But it's interesting, and I look forward to like delving deeper into it, and sort of like scary stories. In the end of this Nameless City one, there's like demons at it, so he gets terrified of that. So it's like going down into the pit of hell in a way. But there's much more short stories in this. Look forward to going through that. It's an interesting read. We'll see what's else in here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, comment, like, share. See you in the next video.